I'm going to start this off by saying that most of the people who live in or around my apartment complex are either on drugs, drink too much, or are generally unpredictable. It's not exactly the safest place to live, and because of that, the police are a regular presence. Sirens are so common they don't even make me look up anymore. That might sound desensitized, but when you live in a place like this, your brain starts automatically filing things into two categories: normal and call someone. Most nights you hear yelling or arguments that spill out into the parking lot. Sometimes you see people stumbling through the complex at all hours, trying to find their unit or just looking for someone to fight or crash with. You remember faces even if you never talk to them, names you hear in passing, shouted across balconies or muttered angrily in police conversations. Get stuck in your brain whether you want them to or not. But last night wasn't normal, not even close. And I need to talk about it because I don't know what else to do. It started around 1 a.m. when I was sitting in my living room trying to unwind from the day. The rain had started to fall steadily outside. Not too hard, just a soft drizzle tapping against the glass. My dog, a usually relaxed and lazy mutt who only gets up for food or strangers, perked his ears and turned toward the window. That's when I heard it too. Coughing. Close. It sounded like someone was standing just outside the living room window. Normally, that wouldn't alarm me. Like I said, people walk around here at night all the time. It's a 24-hour circus in this place. I assumed someone was out pacing again, maybe waiting on a ride or too high to find their door. I turned to tell my dog to settle down. Then the coughing stopped and turned into groaning. It was a strange, dragging sound, like someone pushing their voice through molasses. The kind of sound someone makes when they're hurt. Except this didn't sound like pain. It sounded wrong, almost lazy, like it was being said for effect, not because the person needed help. And that's when my dog let out a growl. Not the usual irritated bark he gives to squirrels or drunk neighbors, but a low, guttural growl that rumbled from deep inside his chest. I'd never heard him growl like that before. It made my skin crawl. He stood stiff, every hair on his back raised like needles. His gaze was fixed on the window. Then the man outside said clearly, "Help!" Not screamed, not cried, just stated, softly, flatly, as if he didn't really care if he was helped or not. I felt my stomach twist. Something in my brain screamed that this wasn't right. I panicked and ran into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard, trying to convince myself I was just overreacting, that it was a neighbor, high or drunk, screwing around again. But the moment I stepped back into the living room, the groaning started again, this time louder, more deliberate. I froze. I don't mean I hesitated. I mean I literally couldn't move. My feet were glued to the floor. My dog growled again, louder, more desperate this time. His entire body was rigid. That finally snapped me out of it. I picked him up and we hurried into my bedroom, locking the door behind us, even though it wouldn't stop anything serious. And then, silence. Not even the rain tapping on the windows. Just the sound of my breathing and my dog's nails shifting slightly on the floor. I tried to reason through it. Who could that have been? I mentally went through the list of people I'd seen or heard in the building, but the voice, that dull, monotone help, didn't match any of them. It wasn't a neighbor I knew. I was certain of it. Against my better judgment, I stepped back into the living room. The second I did, the voice called out again. "Help!" Louder this time, more drawn out. Still no urgency, just that same dispassionate drone. That was enough. I called the police and explained everything. The dispatcher asked if I could see anything out the window. I looked, but it was too dark. The outside lights were out again. Typical. I told them no, and they said they'd send someone to check the area. Right after I hung up, the voice came again. "Help!" Then more groaning, long and slow, like something dying, or pretending to. I ran into the kitchen and stared out the window toward the parking lot. That's when I saw him, a figure, barely more than a shadow, slowly walking across the lot. He wasn't staggering, but his movements were strange, like he was unsure of his limbs, or wearing clothes that didn't fit. I couldn't make out his face, but something about his posture sent chills down my spine. He wasn't just walking, he was lurking. Inside my apartment, everything was completely silent, except for the rain and my dog, who was breathing heavily beside me. I watched the figure disappear behind another building. About 20 minutes passed, no police yet. I returned to the living room and almost immediately, like he had been waiting for me, I heard it again. Help! This time it was almost a whisper, like he was right beneath the window. I called the police again. This time, 2 officers arrived after about 10 minutes. My dog lost it, barking like mad. I stepped outside to talk to them, shivering in the cold night air. As I was explaining what had happened, one of the officers glanced down at the concrete in front of my window. Then he called the other over. There was a dry spot on the wet ground, a clear, human-shaped outline where someone had been standing for a long time, just standing still while the rain soaked everything else. The cops looked disturbed. One of them walked around the building while the other stayed with me. Eventually, they regrouped and told me to keep my doors locked. They didn't find anyone, but they believed I saw something. That did not make me feel better. Now it's tonight. Again, around 1 a.m., I was watching a movie, trying not to think about what happened, and my dog was curled up by the front door. Everything was calm. Too calm. Then he sat up straight, ears rigid. He let out the same low growl, the one that seems to come from someplace ancient and primal. I froze. I didn't even want to look at the window, but then I heard it, the sound of the screen door. It doesn't latch unless you pull it hard, and if you don't, it swings back and hits the door frame twice. It did that. Bang. Pause. Bang. I know I latched it earlier. My heart felt like it stopped. I sat there, barely breathing, while my dog started barking frantically. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, but didn't call anyone. I couldn't decide if I was more scared of what was out there or of opening the door and finding nothing. Then I heard it, tapping on the living room window, light, deliberate, rhythmic, and the voice, still calm, still close. Help! I swear to God it was the same man. I finally worked up the nerve to open the door just enough to relatch the screen. Then I locked the deadbolt and backed away, eyes locked on the window. There hasn't been another knock yet, but I don't feel safe. I haven't felt safe since last night. I don't know if this counts as a scary story, but I don't know what else to call it. I just needed to tell someone, because I don't think he's going to stop coming back. And I'm starting to wonder if the word help means something very different when it's whispered in the dark by someone who doesn't want help at all. To be honest, I don't even know where to start with this. It's been 5 nights to be exact, and whatever's happening, it's not normal, not something you can brush off, not something you can explain away with dreams or tricks of the light. I'm not talking about hearing a creak or the house settling. I'm not talking about a front door or something scratching at a window. No, I mean someone or something has been standing outside my bedroom door, just inches away, breathing, moving, waiting. I've never been the type to sleep with my door open, ever, especially not after the sleep paralysis episodes I used to get. They were terrifying. Those nights where I'd wake up paralyzed, unable to move, and I'd see a man standing at the end of the hallway, just standing there. I always brushed it off as some kind of hallucination, a sleep paralysis demon, like people say. But lately I've been thinking maybe it wasn't just in my head. Maybe it was something else, and maybe it followed me. It started 5 nights ago. The first night, I was just lying in bed trying to fall asleep. It was late, maybe 1 a.m., and I heard something outside my room, a small shuffle like someone was standing just beyond the door. At first, I thought it was my grandma. She's known to wander the house sometimes, and I assumed she was just messing with me. But when I walked into her room, ready to call her out, she was dead asleep. Didn't even stir when I opened the door. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt and went back to bed. But I couldn't shake that feeling, like something was still standing out there and watching. The second night, the same thing happened. More shuffling outside my door. This time, I didn't hesitate. I woke my grandma up, half annoyed and half panicking, telling her jokes weren't funny and I needed sleep. I'm a senior, finals, graduation, all of it. But she looked at me like I was insane. She hadn't left her bed. She was angry that I woke her up, and I believed her. She's not a great actress. I went back to my room confused as hell, sat on my bed, and just listened. But nothing. No shuffling, no noise, just silence. But even that felt loud somehow. Tuesday night, night 3, was when things got worse. I didn't sleep at all that night. It started the same, soft shuffling. This time I decided not to say anything. I just laid there with my dog beside me, waiting. I figured I'd wait it out. But then I heard the footsteps, slow, deliberate, walking past my door, stopping near my dad's old room, then turning back. They stopped directly in front of my door. My dog, my sweet, fearless boy, perked up, ears straight. I expected him to bark or move toward the door, but instead he crawled backward behind me, shaking, whimpering. That's when I heard the sound, a slow, wet suction noise followed by a clicking sound, like someone sucking on the roof of their mouth and ending each motion with a sharp, deliberate pop. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic and purposeful, like calling something. And it didn't stop for hours. Not until I heard birds outside around 4 in the morning. Night 4 was quiet, at least compared to the rest. The same shuffling returned, but it was slower and more patient. It stayed from 11 p.m. to about 2 a.m., never trying anything, never making a sound beyond those soft, dragging footsteps. By then, I'd become numb to it. As long as it stayed behind the door, I could handle it. At least, that's what I thought. But last night changed everything. I went to bed expecting the usual. I left my lamp off, curled up with my dog, and tried not to think about it. Midnight passed. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., but nothing. For a brief moment, I thought maybe it was finally over. Maybe my mind had made it all up. Maybe I'd been so tired and stressed that I imagined it all. But then, it started, not slowly like before. It was different this time. It was urgent, angry. The shuffling came charging from the far end of the hallway with full speed and slammed its body against the crevice of my bedroom door. The impact shook the frame. I shot up in bed. My dog started barking wildly. Then came the breathing, not panting, not out-of-breath gasps. This was something else. It was deep, monotone, like someone taking long, intentional breaths right up against the wood. I didn't even think. I was frozen, heart hammering in my throat. But then one thought entered my mind that made everything worse. My grandma wasn't home. She was out for the night visiting family. That meant I was alone. And the doors, or was the front, the back, I had no idea if I'd locked them. Panic set in. Someone was in the house. I had 2 options. Wait and see if they opened the door, or get up and lock it. I chose the second. I leapt from bed, slammed the door shut, and clicked the lock into place. The breathing stopped. For a second, I thought it was over. I pressed my ear to the door, but silence. And then it started again. Louder this time, more aggressive. The door began yanking forward and backward, as if something was trying to pull it open and break through. The wooden frame cracked. My dog barked nonstop, but I was too scared to move. I grabbed my phone and called my grandma with trembling hand. At first, she thought I was joking, until she heard it. The door frame shaking, the loud guttural breathing, the angry dragging of fingers along the door. She turned serious immediately and told me to get out. She said she was calling the police and heading home, but I needed to leave the room. Now I wasn't going to wait. I grabbed my dog, pushed my screen window open, and slipped out into the night. There's a pine tree just outside my room, and I squeezed myself behind it, holding my dog tight. I'm only 5 feet 2 inches, so I fit easily in the narrow space between the wall and the tree trunk. I stayed there completely still for 10 minutes until I heard the sirens. 2 cop cars pulled up first, my grandma shortly after. I didn't come out until she called my name. The officers escorted us inside. They swept the entire house, but no one was there. Every room, every closet, every inch of the place was empty. But my bedroom door? It was splintered, scarred. The wood around the lock visibly cracked from the outside. And here's the most terrifying part of all. Every single door in the house was still locked. Deadbolts, chain locks, knob locks. Every window sealed shut. There's no sign of forced entry, no open exits. And yet, something was inside. That night we didn't sleep there. I begged my grandma to get a hotel, and the cops agreed. We left immediately. I haven't been back since. But part of me knows, whatever it was that stood behind that door for 5 nights in a row, it'll still be there and waiting. They say your instincts kick in before your brain can catch up. That gut feeling that something's wrong has saved more people than logic ever has. That's what I felt that day. I was around 14 or 15. It was the start of summer break. School was out, the air was heavy and warm, and my parents had both gone off to work like usual. I was alone in the house, just killing time. TV on low, snacks on the table, front curtains half closed to keep the heat out. It was one of those ordinary, boring afternoons that blur into each other. Until the knock. Not the doorbell. Not a friendly ring from the postman or a neighbor. This was a knock. Slow, firm, almost rehearsed. At first I thought maybe it was a package or someone trying to sell something. But when I peeked through the slit in the curtain, that idea disappeared fast. 2 men. One stood squarely at the door. He was wearing a suit, but not in the way that made him look put together. He looked like a kid playing dress-up in his dad's clothes. The fit was off. The fabric looked too thick for summer, and something about his stillness made my skin crawl. He had this fake smile on his face, like he was pretending to be polite, but didn't actually understand what polite meant. The second man was further back, off the porch, facing the road. He wasn't even looking at the house, just standing there, watching the street. That was when I froze. Nobody stands like that unless they're on lookout. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. Called my mom immediately. I remember trying to sound casual, but my voice was shaking. I told her there were 2 men outside and that they gave me a weird feeling. She told me flatly, no one was supposed to come to the house. No work people, no deliveries, no neighbors scheduled, nothing. She told me to stay put, lock everything, and don't answer the door. I was about to listen to her, really I was, but something made me check again. I don't even know why. I opened the door just a crack, with the chain lock still in place, just to say something. And the man in the suit smiled wider, like he'd been waiting for me to open it. "Hey there," he said smoothly. "We're here to talk to your mom. Work-related. She knows us." Then he said her name, her full name, every letter, perfect pronunciation. It stopped me cold. My mom works in a field where privacy matters. She doesn't give out our home address. She doesn't mix work and home. This man should not have known her name, and especially not like that, spoken like someone reading from a file. I stared at him, didn't respond. My heart thumped hard, once, twice, like a warning. I muttered, "She's not home," and started to shut the door. That's when I heard it, from the back of the house, a sound I'll never forget, the subtle click of a back door handle being tested, followed by a faint rattle. Someone was back there, trying to open it. I slammed the front door and threw the deadbolt. I didn't look at the man again. I didn't need to. I ran. I ran through the house, heart hammering in my ears, and checked every window and door, every lock. I remember crouching by the kitchen counter, phone shaking in my hand as I dialed 911. I kept whispering, "Please come fast. Please come fast." The dispatcher told me to stay quiet, stay hidden, and that officers were on the way. I stayed crouched behind the couch, just barely peeking through the window slats. I could still see the man in the suit. He hadn't moved. He just stood there, still, watching, almost like he was waiting for something. And the other man, he never turned around. They were calm, too calm, like this wasn't the first time they'd done this. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights lit up the neighborhood, and just like that, they were gone. Disappeared down the street before the cops could catch them. But that wasn't the end. 2 nights later, it happened again. It was just past midnight when I woke up to a soft thump, then another, then rattling. This time, I didn't hesitate. I got up and moved quietly to the hallway. My mom was already awake, standing at her bedroom door with her phone in her hand. Her face was pale, lips tight. "Back door," she mouthed. We both heard it. Someone was back there, jiggling the door handle like they had the right to come in. I tiptoed to the living room and peeked out through the corner of the curtain. 3 men, one at the back door, one in the yard facing the house, and one slowly walking along the side of our garage with something in his hand, a crowbar. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My mom called our neighbor, an older ex-Marine who'd always told us to call him if anything ever felt off. God bless that man. He showed up within minutes, shotgun in hand. By the time police got there, they had fled again. But this time they left behind their car. It was parked around the corner. Inside, police found zip ties, trash bags, 2 knives, one of them still in its plastic packaging. They never found the men, and as far as we know, they never came back. But I still check the locks 3 times before bed. I still flinch when someone knocks the wrong way. And sometimes when it's late and I'm alone, I still think about that man in the suit, smiling like he knew me, saying my mom's name like he'd already planned everything out. I shouldn't be alive, I know that. And the only reason I am, because the back door was locked. I haven't slept in days. I keep telling myself it's just paranoia, that my mind is playing tricks on me. But I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching me from just outside my window. Maybe if I tell the whole story, it will help me make sense of it. Or maybe someone out there will believe me because I'm starting to feel like I'm losing my grip. It started 3 nights ago, right after my boyfriend left for a work trip. He'll be gone for at least a month, maybe longer, and that fact alone has left me on edge. I've never liked being home alone, especially not in this house. We live in Utah, tucked away in a quiet, rural area where the air is thin and clean, and the mountain view stretches endlessly in every direction. The house itself is massive, way too big for just the 2 of us. 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, creaky floors, and hallways that always feel too dark, even in the daytime. My boyfriend swears it was a steal, and I guess it was. His job pays for the place, and I didn't argue much. But the truth is, something about the house has never sat right with me. It's old, probably built in the 1800s, judging by the architecture and the weird draft that leaks in from every corner. The nights are the worst. The house makes noises. It settles, my boyfriend always says. But the creaks and thuds and groans of the wood are almost sentient. Like the house is breathing, shifting, watching. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed alone, I swear I can hear footsteps in the attic. Heavy ones, measured, like someone pacing. But that's not the part that's keeping me awake lately. For the past 3 nights, every time I go to wash the dishes before bed, I get this overwhelming feeling that someone is watching me. Our kitchen has this big, beautiful window that faces the mountains. It was one of the features that sold us on the place. On clear nights, the moon reflects off the snow caps in the distance, and the entire valley looks silver, peaceful, serene. At least it used to. Now I dread that window. I try not to look at it, but I always end up staring out into the dark, and every time it feels like something is looking back at me. Not just the creepy, irrational feeling you get when you're alone. No, this is focused, intense, cold, like eyes boring into my skull from the other side of the glass. The first night, I just chalked it up to nerves. The second night, I convinced myself I was being silly. I texted my boyfriend about it, just to get it off my chest. His reply was what I expected. "Calm down, babe. You always get like this when I'm away." He's not wrong. I do get anxious when I'm home alone. But this time, it's different. The air in the house feels heavier. The shadows seem darker. Every noise feels intentional. But it was last night, the 3rd night, that finally made me question everything. Like always, I was in the kitchen finishing up the dishes. Jinx, my cat, was curled up in her usual spot on the counter, half asleep. I glanced out the window, a bad habit I haven't been able to stop. But this time something was there, a figure. My blood went ice cold. It was just standing there and a few feet back from the window, right at the edge where the porch light fades into darkness. The silhouette was clearly human, tall with its shoulders hunched slightly forward. I couldn't make out the face. The person, man I think, was wearing a hood. Maybe a hoodie or a thick jacket, I'm not sure. It was too dark, too still. He didn't move. I gasped loud and sharp. The sound startled Jinx, who leapt from her spot and landed beside me. But instead of fleeing like she usually does when I make a sudden noise, she stared straight out the window, eyes wide, unblinking. Every part of her body locked in place, like a statue. That scared me more than anything. Animals don't fake fear. She saw something. I looked again, and the figure was gone. Just like that. Gone. But Jinx kept staring, unblinking, for almost a full minute. Her eyes were locked on the same spot where the man had been. She didn't hiss. She didn't run. She just watched, like she was waiting for him to come back. Eventually, I had to wave my hand in front of her to break her trance. She blinked a few times and looked up at me, then jumped down and slinked away like nothing had happened. That whole moment left me rattled. I didn't sleep at all last night. I sat in the living room with the lights on and every blind drawn, clutching my phone in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other like some cliché horror movie character. I know how it sounds. I know it could all be in my head. Maybe it is, but I can't shake it. My boyfriend still won't take me seriously. I brought it up again this morning and he just said, "It's just nerves, get some sleep, you'll feel better." But I don't feel better, I feel worse. I've been hearing faint tapping on the kitchen window. Just light taps, always at night, always when I'm alone. I've convinced myself it's branches or the wind, but we don't have trees close enough. Tonight, I even thought I heard breathing. No joke, like someone exhaling slowly right outside the glass. It was so faint I almost doubted it. Almost. And tonight, for the first time, I couldn't bring myself to do the dishes. I stood in the hallway, just out of view of the kitchen window, and waited, my heart pounding, the house silent. Even Jinx wouldn't go into the kitchen. She stood near my feet, ears tilted back, staring toward the dark. Eventually, I went in and closed the curtains without looking out. That's where I'm at now, curled up on the couch, writing this. Lights on, every door locked. I feel ridiculous. Maybe I am going crazy. But I needed to get this out. I needed to know if anyone else has felt this, really felt this. Like something is watching, waiting, right outside your window. I'm praying I don't have any updates, but if I do, I'll post again. I just hope to God there's nothing staring back tomorrow night. A few weeks ago, I moved into what I thought was a perfectly ordinary house. A modest two-story home on a quiet suburban street. Nothing flashy, nothing ominous. Just a chance to finally live alone, to start over, to find peace. But what I've uncovered since stepping across that threshold is anything but peaceful. In fact, I believe someone is living within the walls of my home, or something. At first, everything seemed perfectly normal. I unpacked my boxes, painted the living room, hung up pictures to make the place feel like mine. But even during those early days, there was a subtle wrongness in the air. A feeling I couldn't quite place. The house had a stillness that wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, like holding your breath underwater for just a second too long. The noises started almost immediately. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. The house settling, or the wind slipping through tiny cracks in the old wood. You tell yourself these things because the alternative is unthinkable. It was little things at first, faint tapping in the walls, a creaking floorboard upstairs while I was downstairs, the occasional soft scuffle behind the drywall late at night. Distant, harmless, easy to dismiss. But as the days passed, those sounds grew bolder, more deliberate, as if the house was testing my reaction. Late at night, always after midnight, when the world outside was silent, I began to hear whispering, faint and disjointed at first, like hushed voices carried through an old ventilation shaft. I strained my ears to make sense of the words, but they were always just out of reach, like a secret conversation held just beyond my understanding. Sometimes it sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, overlapping in a strange cadence that made my skin crawl. I tried to rationalize it, maybe old pipes vibrating or echoes from somewhere else in the neighborhood. But deep down, I knew better. The whispers weren't coming from outside. They were coming from inside the walls. Days turned into weeks. The atmosphere in the house thickened like fog. The whispering got louder, sometimes breaking into soft giggles or sighs that seemed to drift just behind my shoulder. I began to dread the nights. I left lights on in every room, kept the TV running at low volume just to drown out the murmurs. But they always found a way to pierce through, like needles slipping through fabric. Then came the shadows. At first, I would catch them out of the corner of my eye. Fast, darting movements just beyond my peripheral vision. A sliver of black retreating into the corner as I turned my head. The worst part was that I could feel them watching me. Every time I moved through the house, the hair on the back of my neck would rise, as if unseen eyes tracked my every step from within the walls themselves. Finally, my curiosity, or perhaps my desperation, got the better of me. I couldn't live with the unknown gnawing at my sanity any longer. One evening, around 2 a.m., armed with a heavy flashlight and a creeping dread that gripped my chest like a vice, I decided to investigate. I started in the basement. The air was cold and damp, the concrete floor stained and cracked with age. The deeper I descended, the more I felt the house tighten around me, as if it disapproved of my intrusion. I began knocking gently on the basement walls, methodically moving from one spot to another, listening for hollow spaces behind the drywall. Tap, solid, tap, solid, tap, hollow. My breath caught in my throat. I ran my fingers along the wall and noticed a faint seam, barely visible under the flaking paint. A loose panel, expertly cut and placed. With trembling hands, I pried it open. Behind the panel was a narrow, dark passageway, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through. The air that rushed out was stale, heavy with the smell of mold, sweat, and something metallic. Old blood, perhaps. My heart pounded as I aimed my flashlight into the black void. Every rational thought in my brain screamed for me to seal the panel and leave. But something deeper, a morbid compulsion, pulled me forward. I crawled into the space, my flashlight beam quivering in my shaking hands. The passage was tight, forcing me to shuffle on my hands and knees. Cobwebs brushed my face, and the wooden beams creaked ominously above me, as if warning me to turn back. After what felt like an eternity, I entered a small, hidden chamber. The first thing I noticed was the flickering glow of dying candles. Their wax had melted into grotesque shapes on the dirt floor. The air was suffocating in here, thick with the unmistakable scent of rot and human filth. Against one wall was a makeshift bed. Old, stained blankets laid atop a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. Scattered around were old photographs, some torn, some scratched with deep gouges as if someone had violently tried to erase the faces. Eerie, childlike drawings covered the walls, drawn with crude charcoal or something darker. Stick figures with hollow eyes, crude outlines of people with long fingers, towering shadows behind them. In several drawings, a stick figure stood alone, surrounded by many faceless shapes. But what truly froze my blood was the writing scrawled across the walls. Dozens of names, dozens of dates. The names were varied. Men, women, some only first names, others just initials. But the dates were even more disturbing. Some were from decades ago. Others were recent. Far too recent. Just weeks before I moved in. A terrifying realization gripped me. Whoever had been living here wasn't alone. The names suggested companions, or perhaps victims. Had others found this passage? Had they entered this hidden lair and never returned? The drawings hinted at something ritualistic, almost cult-like, a secret society nesting within the hollow bones of my house. My thoughts were interrupted by a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps, deliberate, slow, getting closer. From the entrance I had crawled through, I heard the unmistakable shuffle of bare feet moving towards me. My flashlight flickered and dimmed for a moment, plunging me into near darkness. My breathing quickened. My only instinct was to retreat. Panicked, I crawled backward through the passage, scraping my hands and knees on the jagged floor, my heart hammering like a drumbeat in my ears. The footsteps kept pace, but never sped up. They were patient, as if whoever was following me knew I would never outrun them. Finally, I burst out into the basement, sealing the panel shut behind me as fast as my trembling hands allowed. I stood there for a long time, back against the wall, listening. Silence. For a brief moment, I convinced myself that perhaps I imagined the footsteps. But then softly from behind the wall, I heard the whispering again. Louder now, more distinct. My name. They were saying my name. That was 2 nights ago. Since then, the atmosphere in the house has changed entirely. The whispering no longer fades during the day. It follows me wherever I go. I hear laughter sometimes, a low, rasping growl vibrating through the floorboards at night. My lights flicker constantly. Shadows dance across the corners of my vision even when the house is fully lit. Most disturbing of all is the feeling that I'm being watched constantly, no matter where I am, the kitchen, the bathroom, even outside in the yard. The oppressive sensation of eyes pressed against me never fades. I sense them behind the walls, crouched in their hidden passageways, waiting, watching. I no longer sleep. I can't. Every night feels like a test of my sanity. Every creak of the house sounds like someone moving. Every breath I take feels like it's not the only one being drawn in the room. I don't know who or what these hidden occupants are. I don't know what they want, but I know this. They were here long before me, and they're not content to stay hidden much longer. I'm trapped here, Reddit, and I'm terrified that the walls aren't just sheltering them. They are part of them, breathing with them, feeding them. Please, someone tell me what to do. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I've been delivering for Uber Eats for a long time. Thousands of orders by now. Most of them blur together in my memory, just the usual mix of restaurants, addresses, and leave it at the door instructions. But one night, one delivery stands out, and I can't stop thinking about it. It started like any other. I got an order from Baskin-Robbins, a few pints and some toppings. The customer was only a couple miles away in one of those upscale apartment buildings downtown. Nothing unusual. I picked up the order, thanked the cashier, and walked to my car with the cold plastic bag sweating in my hand. As I was buckling in, I got a message through the app. Hey, thanks for getting my order. Could you just come inside and leave it on my table? I recently got home from the hospital and can't bend down at the door. It struck me as odd. No one's ever asked me to enter their apartment before. Normally, even if they're home, they just want it left outside. But I didn't think too much of it. People get injured all the time, and maybe this guy really couldn't bend. I replied, sure thing, I'll be there soon. A minute later, another message popped up. My apartment is unlocked. I'll be 10 feet inside waiting. That wording, it stopped me cold. Not, I'll be just inside. Not, the door's open, come in. He said 10 feet inside. Who the hell describes their position inside their apartment like that? It sounded calculated, like he had measured the distance. I brushed it off, trying to rationalize it. Maybe he just meant he'd be close to the door and didn't think twice about his wording. But even then, a little chill ran down my spine. I arrived at the building, one of those tall luxury towers with glass doors, floral arrangements, and a keypad entry. The kind of place where the air even smells expensive. The app listed the customer as Zachary Winstrom, but when I scrolled through the directory on the keypad, there was no Winstrom, only Zachary Warner. Same first name, same apartment number, 220. The discrepancy set off another red flag. Who puts a different last name on their delivery order when they know the driver needs to find them on a directory? It didn't feel like a typo. It felt intentional. I called the number listed in the app. It rang and someone answered, but didn't say a word. Just silence, then a soft click. No buzz, no come on up, nothing. I tried again. No answer this time. Most people are eager to get their food. They'll buzz you in before you even press the call button properly. But not this guy. I stood outside for 5 minutes debating whether to cancel the order. I texted again. Still nothing. Just as I was about to give up, someone else, an actual tenant I guess, opened the door on their way out. I slipped inside and made my way to the elevator. The lobby was just as fancy as I expected. Dim, warm lights, soft jazz playing, polished marble floors. wood paneling, a complimentary tea station off to the side. Normally it'd be comforting. Tonight it felt like a haunted hotel. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the second floor. The moment the doors slid shut, my phone rang. An unknown number. Not the number from the Uber app, a completely different one. I let it ring for a couple seconds, staring at the screen, before answering. The voice on the other end was male, but it was wrong. Distorted, like it was run through a malfunctioning voice modulator. It was angry, frantic, garbled, like someone was trying to scream through a broken speaker. I couldn't make out the words, just the emotion, rage, desperation, or maybe something worse. Then it stopped. Click. The elevator dinged, second floor. I stepped out slowly, suddenly hyper-aware of how quiet the hallway was. Too quiet for a building this big. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, makes your heartbeat feel intrusive. I found Unit 220 at the far end of the hall. The door was cracked open, exactly like the text said. I froze. Every instinct I had screamed, "Don't go in there." But I'd come this far, and part of me still wanted to believe this was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe he was old. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he had a speech issue or a bad connection. Maybe. I knocked on the open door. No response. I raised my voice. "Hey, I've got your Uber Eats order." Still nothing, not even movement. I pushed the door open a little more. The apartment was almost pitch black inside. No TV, no lights, just a faint sliver of moonlight leaking through partially drawn blinds. I could barely make out the outlines of a couch, a shelf, and some framed pictures on the wall. Something about the darkness felt unnatural, like the kind of black you only find in basements or nightmares. I switched on my phone flashlight. The beam caught the edge of the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. A figure, motionless, just barely visible behind the wall that bordered the kitchen, exactly where someone would be standing if they were 10 feet inside. Tall, still, silent. I couldn't tell if it was a man, a mannequin, or something worse. The light didn't reach far enough to see a face, just the outline of a head, a shoulder, and the eerie stillness of someone who knew they were being watched. My stomach dropped. I stepped back, heart hammering. "F this shit!" I yelled and dropped the order right there at the doorway. Ice cream splattered across the entryway as the bag hit the floor. I turned and ran. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I didn't stop until I was back in the car, doors locked, engine running, tires screeching as I pulled away from that place like it was cursed. Even though I'm 6 feet tall, 185 pounds, and carry both a taser and a large knife on every delivery, none of it mattered. Something about that place, that presence, told me that if I stepped over the threshold, I wasn't walking back out. Later, I called Uber to report the incident, told them everything. They deactivated the account. Still, the questions haunt me. Who was the person on the phone? Why the distortion? Why the wrong name? Was it deliberate to throw someone off? Or had I interrupted something? Staged? Was someone waiting behind that wall for me? And if so, what the hell were they planning to do? Worst of all, what if this wasn't the first time they'd tried something like this? That night wasn't just my scariest delivery. It was the closest I've ever come to stepping into a horror movie, and maybe never stepping out again. The imperfect nature of Uber has made me feel like a watcher, an observer of humanity passing through in fragments. I am not a main character. I am a non-player presence in the chaotic narratives of thousands of strangers. I witness joy, sorrow, excess, and vulnerability, all from the front seat of a car they never look at twice after the ride ends. When they get in, I become what they need. If they're buzzing with laughter and tipsy adrenaline, I reflect that back, offering quips, playing party music, letting the energy soar. If they're quiet or upset, I respect that too. I become silent, invisible, reliable. Over the years, I've picked people up from all places. The airport with tears still fresh in their eyes, smoky bars with lipstick smudged and ties loosened, from the sterile silence of hospitals and the solemn echo of funeral homes. I've even picked people up directly from prison. I would wager that only priests see people at more turning points in life than I do. And yet I am not allowed to act. Not truly, I must agree, nod, or stay silent. I cannot argue, question, or reveal too much of myself. The whole system is built on approval, and one bad review can cost me income. I am neutral by design, a created presence, a people-pleasing ghost who merely chauffeurs others through their own stories. I've heard depraved confessions spill from the lips of businessmen who reeked of whiskey and self-importance. I've listened to zealous spiritual leaders speak in cruel, mocking tones about the very doctrines they claim to uphold. And always I remain polite, because that is the role. What I experienced tonight is why I'm writing this. Not to unburden myself, but because I need someone to know. Especially you, officer. You see, I need you to understand the context, the emotional fabric of what I felt, so that I can explain what happened without believing that I failed Abigail. Abigail Yukovic, my ex-wife. Our marriage collapsed 3 years ago, quietly and inevitably. Along with it, much of my life. She kept the house, the dog, and custody of the children. I was left with my car, my only real asset. The divorce was justified, at least from her point of view. She claimed she couldn't understand my needs. The court deemed those needs unnatural, disturbing. When I started expressing them outwardly, visibly, Abigail found me repulsive. I changed in ways she could not or would not accept. And yet I never resented her. She had always seemed to live by a strict moral code. Even when she began spending long nights at the gym with her predominantly male co-workers, men who looked like magazine covers come to life, I still believe she never cheated. I truly think she simply lost interest. I think my transformation disgusted her, and maybe it should have. Maybe even now you believe it was right to cast me aside. But please don't let your judgment of who I am affect how you consider what I'm about to tell you. It was 3:03 a.m. when the request appeared on my Uber driver app. A writer named Abigail had pinged me from Viceroy nightclub in Westport. As I drove to the location, a strange sensation crawled over me. The name alone stirred something, a tangle of memory and dread. I parked outside the club, a grotesque beacon of overstimulation. Lights blinked and flashed like warning signs. The bass from within rumbled through the pavement like distant thunder. The crowd outside was primal, barely dressed bodies glistening under neon, men posturing, women weaving through them like smoke with mischief in their eyes. It felt like a performance of something unholy. I couldn't imagine Abigail inside a place like that. Not the Abigail I knew. Not the woman who once lectured a waitress for wearing red lipstick around our children. No one approached the car after the first few minutes. I waited the required time, then did what any driver would. I attempted to call the rider. The phone rang once and then went silent. I tried again. The result was the same. Deciding to cancel, I made one final attempt. This time, the call connected. The voice on the other end was familiar, slurred and dazed from alcohol, but unmistakably Abigail's. She seemed confused, as if she didn't recognize my voice. She insisted she was already in her Uber. I tried to correct her, told her I was outside the club. What I heard next shifted everything. Another voice, male and unnervingly calm, asked her to show him the Uber app. There was a pause followed by the sound of something falling, a thud like a body slumping or a phone hitting the floor. Then came her panic. She began to cry out for help. Her voice trembled, broken by gasps and pain. She begged someone to stop. She pleaded for an explanation. Then the words dissolved into sounds, screams, stifled agony, fear, and then nothing. No disconnection tone, just an absence. A deafening silence that pressed into my ears like static. I sat frozen in my seat, my mind refusing to process what I had just heard. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly for a long time. The club lights continued to pulse behind me. People kept laughing, stumbling, shouting. But in that moment, I was outside of it all, adrift. The next 24 hours passed in a haze. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just drove around the city, my mind spiraling with what-ifs and memories. I kept replaying that final moment on the call, over and over, as if I could change the outcome by thinking hard enough. Now I'm here, writing this, reporting it. I don't know what happened to her, officer. I don't know where she went or who she got into that car with. But I know what I heard. I know she needed help. And someone else, whoever he was, answered that need before I ever got the chance. I never stopped caring about her, not even after the divorce. And that's why this haunts me. Because no matter what she thought of me, no matter what judgments were passed on my identity, I would have kept her safe. And I couldn't. Now she's gone. And her Uber has departed. I hardly like to remember the first and last time I ever took an Uber, as it was a fairly traumatic experience. I had just finished an 11-hour shift, and I had hardly gotten much sleep the night before. Even if I had a vehicle at the time, I'm not sure I would have chosen to drive myself home because of my level of exhaustion. Usually I took a taxi home, but either the ones that drove past me that day didn't want to drive me, or they were all taken. So I chose to use Uber since my friends both raved so hard about it, practically preaching as if it were their personal religion. Well, in every few good experiences, there's a bad one, and this is where mine begins. Once my Uber arrived, I noticed it had no back license plate, but I didn't think much about it because, to be quite honest, I was a blink away from passing out onto the pavement. So of course, I didn't think anything of it. The moment I sat in the vehicle, I noticed how irrevocably clean it was, especially compared to most of the taxis I had taken in my life. Another thing I noticed was how the man in the front seat never so much as took a glance in my direction. He even just sat there for a minute in complete and utter silence, unmoving. After that minute, I began to think that I had somehow gotten into the wrong vehicle and apologized. But once I did, the car started moving, so I relaxed a bit, assuming he may have just been waiting for a moment to get back into traffic. The last thing I remembered was watching the bustling downtown area going about its business, until my eyes finally chose to flutter shut and send me into a blissful sleep. I woke up once the car hit a large pothole in the road, causing me to whack my head into the window fairly hard. The first thing that alerted me to something being wrong was the fact that it was super dark out. When I had entered the Uber, it was at least 3 at night. It doesn't get dark at that time of year till at least 4 or 5 at night. On top of that, the highway in which I didn't recognize was practically dead, which that in itself was a rarity, so I couldn't even begin to comprehend how long I had actually been out for. As I glanced out of the window, I felt my heart sink into the pit of my stomach slightly. We were no longer inside the city. Instead, we were on a pitch-black highway surrounded by dense forest, and I didn't live anywhere outside of the city. I quickly began to feel the tingling sensation of eyes on me, causing me to turn my head to the empty seat beside me, except it was no longer empty. It was nearly too dark to see, but I was able to make out the shape of a dark, lanky figure seated beside me. The only part of his face that was lit up by the dim dash lights were his insanely wide eyes staring at me intensely. The way he looked at me gave me a sense of complete and utter panic. I was in a situation that I never thought could happen to me. It was something that happened to other people, never me. "Do you happen to know if we're close to my destination?" I questioned, trying to sound as calm as possible. The man beside me continued to stare at me longer than any sane person would be comfortable with. "He has other plans for you, a new destination. We're almost there," the man beside me stated in an unsettling tone. At this point, I was sure the man hadn't blinked a single time since I had awoken. The man's words quickly sent my already present panic into overdrive. The car was going nearly 100 miles per hour on the highway, in the middle of the night. My mind began to race as fast as the vehicle, grasping at any faint idea I could use to get me out of the car or out of my situation. If I jumped out of the vehicle and somehow didn't break any bones or end up dead, they would easily find me on the road. Plus, I had no clue where I even was. "I have to go to the bathroom. Could we maybe make a quick stop?" I said. The two men simply stayed quiet, practically ignoring my question, although it hardly seemed as though they had even heard me at all. "The others will welcome you once he is done. He will welcome you." The man in front seat finally spoke deeply, the vibrato and intent in his voice shaking me to the core. The moment a single vehicle finally drove past us, the light that filled the car was enough to help me see my surroundings better, giving me a moment to get a more clear look at the second passenger. The man beside me had fresh stitches all over his face, His top eyelids were stuck open, making his constant wide eyes more understandable, but no less unsettling. His entire face was almost like some sick sewing project, almost reminiscent of Frankenstein, but confined to the head rather than the entire body. You came to us for a reason. He will be pleased to make you like me, like us, the man beside me said, beginning to stroke my hair and touch the features of my face. I began to shake under the stranger's touch as well as his words. His fingers were rough and disconcertingly dry. The sound of sirens from behind us let an overbearing rush of relief wash over me. But there was also an almost uncomfortable tension that fell upon the air. It felt as if something within the air was taut and ready to snap at any moment, as if the slightest provocation or wrong movement could cause it to blow. "Do you folks know why I pulled you over?" the police officer questioned once he reached the car. "No, sir. I don't believe I do," the man in the driver's seat said in a flat manner. "Well, for starters, you were going nearly 50 over the speed limit. That, of course, isn't a huge deal, as it is the highway, and it's not very busy at this time. But both of your headlights are burnt out, and that's too dangerous to be on the road. I'm surprised I even caught you. It was so dark," the officer stated calmly, tapping his fingers against the car as he stared into the dark vehicle. The moment his eyes made contact with my own, I tried as hard as possible to convey my fear, to silently plead for help without aggravating the two men in some way. "I thought I recognized you. There's a warrant out for your arrest. I'm afraid I'll have to take you in," the cop says sternly, singling me out. The men around me didn't seem to clue into the fact that he was talking to me, as I saw them both tense up at his words. The moment the police officer opened the passenger door beside me, I nearly began crying out of relief, but I refrained. The men behind me stayed uncomfortably quiet as the cop locked the cuffs on me. The now overly acquainted sense of unease and panic continued to fill me as I felt the men's eyes bore into my back. It felt like at any moment my chance at freedom would be taken away, that they would be armed and shoot my savior, or even me. But they did neither. Instead, they sat within the car quietly, just staring at us in a horrific trance-like state. Even as the cop car began to drive away, I somehow still felt their cold and unnerving stares upon my skin. The air still thick with tension, and no matter how far away we got, their car never moved so much as an inch, which made me feeling even more so stressed than before if it was even possible. "How'd you know I needed help?" "I'm a cop. I could recognize the look in your eyes from a mile away. I see it daily," he stated. Within seconds, I began breaking down in tears. Every emotion suddenly overwhelmed me. The man didn't say another word the entire ride. He simply let me cry it out. He even offered to watch my house for the night in case they came back, as I had given them my address. I, of course, said yes, even though I didn't sleep a wink that night. They never came back. They probably found another woman instead. The thought sickens and terrifies me. Maybe they never even left that spot on the highway. If that hellish car had never gotten pulled over, I don't even want to know what would have happened. I wouldn't have gotten my chance to escape the horrible situation I had found myself in. Be careful if you take an Uber or any other service like it. And no matter how tired you are, don't fall asleep in the vehicle. Three months ago, I quit my job as a 911 dispatcher after one call that changed everything. Since then, I haven't been able to sleep properly. I can't eat. I can't stop hearing her voice. I even made a copy of the call, which I listen to every night, hoping I can figure out what I should have done differently. I'm writing this because maybe it'll help me process it. Maybe putting it down will help me move on. Though deep down, I'm not sure I want to move on. Some part of me needs to remember. I had answered the call like I always did, asking what the emergency was. On the other end, a little girl's voice came through, barely a whisper. She said that something had hurt her mommy and daddy. She also said it was still in the house and that it was looking for her. My heart dropped. The worst calls were always the ones from children. I'd only had a few over my 8-year career, but those are the ones that never leave you. They claw their way into your soul and refuse to let go. One of my colleagues had to leave the job after a similar call. Now I understood why. There's something uniquely devastating about hearing fear in a child's voice, knowing you can't physically be there to help them, You have to sit and listen. Keep them calm. Keep yourself calm. You're the only thing between them and the dark. I told her gently that she had done the right thing by calling. I asked her if she was hiding somewhere safe. She responded that she was in the closet and didn't think it knew she was there. I told her that was very good and instructed her to stay there. I emphasized that she shouldn't make a sound no matter what she heard, and asked if she could do that for me. She quietly said that she could, then asked if someone was coming to get her. I started pulling the location linked to the number. The system took a few seconds to triangulate the signal, but it eventually popped up. I reassured her that the police were on their way and told her I would stay with hers until they got there. I asked if she could tell me her address, just to make sure. She answered that it was House 1840 on Hollow Grove and added that her daddy had shown her the number. Hollow Grove, quiet, upscale neighborhood, brick homes, big lots, rarely any incidents. It was the kind of place you didn't expect anything to happen in. The silence between those houses felt heavier now. It always does when you know someone is dying in one of them. I flagged an urgent response and alerted the nearest available unit. I asked her if her name was Alice, and when she said yes, I told her mine was Sarah. I told her that it was nice to meet her and that she was doing a really good job, that I was very proud of her. Then a loud thud echoed through the phone. Alice whimpered. She said that it hurt her mommy and daddy and made all the red come out. She added that it was walking around and looking for her. I fought to keep my voice steady. I told her she was doing amazing and to stay hidden. I said that the police were close and tried to distract her by asking if she wanted to tell me more about her birthday. I asked her what kind of cake she had. She said that she had turned 5 yesterday. Her mommy made a cake and they had a castle and dressed like princesses. Her daddy was the prince. She said it was really fun. Another thud. Her breathing sped up. I needed to keep her focused on anything but the sounds. I told her she must have looked beautiful and said I bet her dress sparkled. I asked if she got any presents she really liked. She said she got a big unicorn plushie. It was pink and sparkly and smelled like strawberries. I told her she was very brave and suggested we play a counting game. I told her to close her eyes and count to 100 in her head and that I'd count with her. She started 1, 2, 3. Then I heard scraping, nails on wood, very close, too close. My stomach twisted. I held my breath, listening. I couldn't do anything but talk. My words were the only thing between her and whatever was outside that door. I told her that the officers were 2 minutes away and that she was doing perfectly. I encouraged her to keep counting and reminded her I was right there with her. Then my screen lit up. Officers on scene. Relief flooded through me. I told her that they were right outside and it would only be a little longer. I heard distant shouting, then gunshots, then silence. I froze. My supervisor looked over, alarmed. I flagged the incident. Gunshots heard, officers down. I called out to her, asking if she was still there. Nothing. Then a shuffle. The phone picked up again. She said hi to me. I asked if she was okay and requested to speak to the officers, asking if they were with her. She replied that I couldn't. She said they were like mommy and daddy now. All red, that they weren't moving anymore. I stopped breathing. I asked her where she was right now. She giggled. She told me she wasn't in the closet anymore and explained that she wanted to say hi. She said that the officers screamed and tried to shoot her, which she thought was silly, so she made them stop moving. Then she added that she had a snack. Confused, I repeated the word. A snack? She said that her mommy had been feeding her and she bit her by accident. She said that the red tasted good, so she kept going. She explained that her daddy tried to stop her and hit her, so she bit him too. She said she didn't stop until they both stopped moving. I pressed mute and vomited in my trash bin. My hands were shaking. My eyes were burning. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a joke, a delusion, a child having a breakdown. Anything but this. She asked if I was sick. I forced myself to respond that I wasn't and that I was fine. Then silence. She told me I sounded weird like Sally did when she ate Sally's cat. She said Sally didn't want to be friends after that. Then she asked if I was still her friend. I said that I was, always. She giggled again and said that made her happy, Then she said she thought she wanted a new mommy now, and that I could be her new mommy. She told me she liked me. Then she added that she was still hungry, and that after she ate, she would come find me. Then silence. I handed in my resignation the next morning. I didn't give a reason. I didn't need to. The look in my supervisor's eyes said she already knew. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded. And every night since, I replay the tape, just to hear her voice again, even though I know what comes next. And that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed these chilling stories. If you did, don't forget to drop a comment with your favorite one, hit that like button, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.